Hello, I wanted to talk through a patch I made on this small modular skiff, partly to explain the technique that somebody asked me about, and partly because it turned into a really interesting experience in sound design that I wanted to share with you. And it all began with this really simple Braids FM patch. There's nothing very interesting there. It's a little FM pulse. Just to show you our signal flow, our Braids, which is our FM oscillator, is going into ripples, which is a filter, and we're using this peaks here as an envelope, and it's just got a short decay, so it just gets plucked. Our envelope is being triggered from a MIDI source, which is this Ableton push going into a CV PAL at the far end. And yeah, that's, I think, everything you need to know. So the first thing I did actually is I usually went to some external effects and just added this spacious reverb, which works quite nicely with the pluck. But the thing with a short pluck is, on a real instrument, a pluck doesn't just fade off in terms of volume, it fades off in terms of timbre, which means we ought to be modulating the filter as well. And so the first thing I did was I said, okay, well, let's mult our envelope. So I'm just going to put the output of the envelope into this buff mult and stick that through it. And as an added bonus, we get the nice effect of another LED coming on. And then let's feed the envelope, that short decay, into the FM input of our ripples. So that's going to open it up over time, and we're going to use this attenuverter to sort of control how much it opens it up. So first of all, lower the cutoff to the sort of end point that we want. And then this is how much the envelope will affect it. And if you sort of play around, let's just turn the reverb down a tad. You get that nice sort of woody, slightly low-pass, gatey, buchler-y tone. Not quite the same, because it's just a filter and a VCA. I should mention, if you've not used the ripples, there's also a built-in VCA in here, which is why my gate input is opening up the VCA. And I had this nice enough plucky noise. But the thing it doesn't have is motion. And I think one of the most important things you can do is use your modulation sources to create motion within a sound. A lot of sounds have motion, be it like vibrato on a string instrument or other forms of modulation in a synthesizer. We're always using our LFOs for things. And I just borrowed this disting off a friend, and I started wondering about sample and hold. So to explain sample and hold, if you don't know what it is, really simple. You have a waveform that goes left to right. Here's my waveform. It's a sine wave. And every time I ask it to sample it, it takes the frequency it's at and holds it until it gets another trigger, and then it holds that. So you sort of get this stepped output. And a very common input waveform is white noise. Helps with the disting that its jacks are blue or red for positive and negative. Negative and positive, I think you'll find. And so this one, which is purple, is going blue and red very fast. And if I plug it into our audio output, you'll hear it's actually a white noise source. So let's use the white noise as the wave we're going to sample. Now, frequently you'll sample and hold at a clock rate to get nice regular chunks. But I wondered about sampling at audio rate. So this module here, this is a clock I built. And again, I can prove to you it's a clock because it's going at audio rate. And if I turn it up on our audio output, it's a square wave. Let's turn that off. And let's plug that into the clock input on sample and hold. And all of a sudden our output is going blue and red, which means, hey, I'm changing a lot. So I plugged that to the FM input on my Braids, which you can just see down here. And there's an attenuverter for our FM. If I turn it up, you'll hear that, it's wibbling the pitch very fast, which is no good. But if you turn it right down, it does nothing. And if you turn it up a tiny bit, you get this lovely little fizzle, a little jitter. And if I just turn some release up on our envelope, and that fizzle is really interesting. And actually what it made me start wondering is if this wasn't so good a plucked sound anymore. Because this fizzle might lend itself to something a bit longer. And so I started exploring what this would be like as a pad. So turn it to sustain, and turn up some release and slow down the attack. And actually, let's go back to that big spacey reverb. Jitter, all of a sudden, I just found became quite compelling at that long range, especially when you sort of... We're still going to let the envelope control our filter a little, add some resonance maybe. But that jitter just brings it to life, and it gives this almost disaster piecey edge. I did want to check I wasn't going mad and I hadn't just invented something that was a waste of time. And so I said, what happens if you just plug white noise straight into that FM input? And actually, it doesn't work as well because it's so consistent. It's actually the jitter of the sample and hold that really makes it work for me. But also, what began as an attempt to make a plucky, booklery lead, because that's where I began, turned into this long, drifting pad. And yeah, so I wanted to talk about audio rate. I wanted to share that with you. Tell you a bit about audio rate, sample and hold, which is actually much more interesting a source than I could have imagined. And that's it, really. Thanks very much.